My guest today is filmmaker Pierre Rehov, and with more than 10 documentaries to his credit, Pierre has made serious waves with his politically incorrect stance. Even though his work is sometimes accused of being one-sided, it has always been proven that all of his films are based on actual facts. Now, Pierre experienced terrorism when he was only 7 years old, but he and his family became part of as many as 1 million French fleeing Algeria, and he studied law in Paris before becoming a journalist, mainly in the film industry. Then in
Yeah.
January of 2008, Pierre was embedded in the 4-1 U.S. cavalry in Durah, where he filmed hours of dailies showing the situation in Iraq from the field. And those images are part of his documentary, The Path to Darkness. Now, he recently directed the film Pogroms, a hard-hitting documentary on the atrocities of October 7th and their global aftermath. The film, now streaming on Apple TV and Tubi TV, has become a reference point for understanding the brutal reality behind the attacks. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome filmmaker Pierre Rehov and his new hard-hitting film documentary, Pogroms, to the show. Welcome, Pierre.
Thank you for having me on your show. I'm sorry for people who are watching me. They're going to have to listen to my French accent for some time.
That's okay. I've had other French on the show, and it's a beautiful accent. So I think we're good with that. But I want to ask you something. Why was it important for you to make this documentary Programs and tell the story of the October 7th massacre?
Well, as you mentioned, I've been making many other documentaries, actually about 20. I've been doing that for 24 years. And basically, all of my documentary, just before September 11, I got involved out of, weird reasons, too long to explain. But I got involved. It was not my job, and all of a sudden, I became a documentary filmmaker because my first documentary was a real huge success in France. And I thought, okay, there is something there. I mean, people need some truth to be shown, to be said. And as you mentioned, I always stick to facts. The dates. I'm sorry. I'm going to answer to specific question in a second, but I just want to mention something about what is a fact. One of my most important, I mean, better known films, at least in Israel, called The Road to Jenin. I made it in 2003 as a response to a propaganda film made by an Israeli Arab called Mohammed Bakri. And Mohammed Bakri made a film called Jenin Jenin, which became internationally known as the film about the massacre that Israeli soldiers committed in Jenin. Okay. In this film, many things happened, but I'm going to tell you only two things. Thing number one, Palestinians were claiming that Israel killed 700 people. That's propaganda, that's a lie. The fact is, Israel killed 54 people, out of them 38 terrorists, and during the battle, almost 40 Israeli soldiers were killed, which means it was an almost balanced battle and anything but a massacre. Yet, if you go on the internet and you look at Battle Jenin, you will find thousands, hundreds of thousands of posts saying that it was a massacre. The fact is this, simple, numbers. Still in the same film, I went into Jenin. I pretended to be a French journalist working for television. And when you're French in the Palestinian territories, you're a hero. They love French people. Today they love Macron. In the past, they love Jacques Chirac. They always think that the French are their allies. And actually they are. The French government is always on the side of the Arabs. That's the French policy. They need oil. What can we do? France needs oil. So where's the oil? Not in Israel. In Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, other places. And what do these people do? They back up Palestinians. How many Muslims in the world? Almost 2 billion. How many Jews? 16 millions. How can you counter the propaganda made by and for 2 billion people? So that's my job, to debunk all this propaganda. I mean, thankfully, among other people. So I went to Jenin, and in Jenin, I went to what we call refugee camp, which is actually a suburb with beautiful houses and not so beautiful houses, but it's a suburb. And I met with the head of the hospital who had said that 700 people had died. And he told me, uh, when the soldiers arrived with the tanks, the first thing they did was to bomb the hospital and to bomb the western aisle of the hospital. I said, "Wow, that's a war crime. How disgusting! Can I see?" He said, "Absolutely." He took me out of his office and we went to visit the hospital. There was one little hole like this on the wall. I said, "This is," and he told me 12 tank shells, 12 tank shells. I said, "This is a result of 12 tank shells?" He said, "Yeah, but they were anti-personnel tank shells," which doesn't exist. So this day, I started to understand the situation for the first time. Why is this guy who tell me there was a massacre, they destroyed the hospital, and show me a wall which is intact? Because he knows that when I go back to France, I'm going to come with my images and I'm going to come with his declaration, and my chief editor or somebody in the government is going to cut off the reality, the images, and only put his words instead of what happened. So I've been fighting this for now 24 years. And when I go there, I always end up finding somebody who is telling me the truth about the real situation, and I debunked the so-called, March to the Return or Return March or whatever we called it in 2009 when we were attacking Israel. And by then, I said, "Oh my God, if we are capable of having 30,000 people by the border of Israel rioting every day, and if we are capable of sending trucks and buses and cars to pick up people in the Gaza city to take them to the border, one day they're going to be able to cross the border and kill us." That was in 2019. 6 years ago. So in 2023, October 6th, my wife went to her parents who are living even closer to Gaza. I live 20 miles north of Gaza, and she went about 10 miles north of Gaza. And at 6:30 in the morning, like every Israeli, I was woken up by the sirens. Hamas was firing thousands and thousands of rockets into the civilian population of Israel, hoping to kill as many people as possible. And at the same time, Hamas terrorists and civilians, I'm sorry for that, and civilian, I tried to turn it off, it doesn't work.
That's all good. Happens all the time.
Yeah, and just in the middle of a tragic story, I got this. But anyhow, at 6:30 this happened, and we knew later that they invaded Israel. They slaughtered people, they kidnapped people, they burned babies alive, they beheaded people, they raped women, they took hostages. The most horrible pogrom in the history of Israel, and the worst thing that happened to the Jews since the Holocaust. And I was right there, and between 6:30 and 10 a.m., I could not reach my wife, who was 10 miles north of Gaza, meaning in the area where actually Hamas invaded. Not only Hamas, but Hamas and other 5 terror organizations, plus 2,000 innocent civilians. And the worst atrocities were not committed by Hamas. The worst atrocities and the rapings and the tortures and all that were committed by Palestinian civilians.
Wow.
The famous innocent civilians that United Nations, the European Union, and Amnesty International, and Doctors Without Borders are all the time trying to protect by just promoting the numbers that Hamas is giving, and those numbers are wrong, and I know that. I'm going to give you okay. So why did I make this film? I think I just answered to that. It was in my guts. How can this happen? And in the afternoon, in the evening, I started watching American television, hoping to see thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in the streets of Manhattan and Los Angeles with big signs: "We are Israel. We defend Israel. We don't stop the massacre." No, people were in the streets of Los Angeles and other places parading for Palestinians who just committed the worst massacre of Jews in the Holocaust. I thought I have to do something about it. At first, I didn't want, for a simple reason. If you're going to talk about something like that, you have to talk to the victims, and you have to use the tragedy of the victims to make a film. And my moral compass, sorry, my
Yeah.
moral compass stopped me at the beginning for doing that. But out of the blue, some gentleman, looking at my work in general, sent me some money. Very rich British guy sent me. I didn't know him. He didn't know me. And one morning, I go on my PayPal account and I see a big donation. I said, "That's a sign. I have to do something about it." I talked to my wife. Said, "I've been telling you that for 3 months. You have to make a film." I said, "Okay, I'm going to make a film." And I make programs. But when I made programs, I decided not to go after the victims. I want to talk, as you can see in the film. First of all, there is no narration. It's only people talking one after the other and explaining the situation. I don't like narrations if I can avoid it. And on the top of that, I went after the first responders. Those are the people explaining what they saw. And one of them, when he told me, a very, very nice gentleman, I really like him, real Israeli hero. Uh, he is a member of Zaka, which is this organization collecting the remains of people who died in terror attacks. And it became so efficient and famous that now they go around the world to help in other situations, like in Haiti when there was the earthquake, like in Turkey when there was a terror attack. Everywhere in the world they go there. And this gentleman told me, well, among the horrible things I saw, uh, when I went in one of the houses in the kibbutz, I saw a pregnant woman whose belly had been cut off, the fetus taken out and stabbed in front of her before she was shot. And she had also a 7 years kid in the same room who was, beheaded. Okay, woman. So I said, okay, Yossi, his name is Yossi Bell. I said, Yossi, uh, people are saying that this is not true. I read articles here and there, but this is not true. Why are they saying that? And I mean, he said, this is not true. Okay. He took his cell phone and he showed me the video that he took. And I saw actually laying in blood a woman with, the fetus out who was already 8 months old, a baby, was stabbed in the head, and the woman was killed after that. So when you see those images, and when you hear the next day that Israel is committed a genocide and all the stupid things that people are coming up with for political reasons with the money of Qatar and the money of Iran, you just want to do something. Since I'm too old to join the army, I would happily have joined the army, the Sahel, and go to kick some asses in Gaza or anywhere in the world. But I'm too old for that. So only thing I can do is kick some asses with my camera.
Well, let me ask you some questions
Sure.
based on the film, and I learned a lot because I know that you work to bring forth the facts, and a lot of this, all of this film will be shocking to many people, not just with the images, but with the information, because you step back in history. But I want to talk about the October 7th massacre because from your documentary, I understand that Hamas started a war with Israel against the wishes of Iran. Why
Yeah.
did Iran not want Hamas to attack Israel?
They wanted Hamas to attack Israel, but they were not ready. They wanted Hamas to attack Israel, Hezbollah to attack Israel, many terror organizations in Iraq to attack Israel, and Yemen and the Houthis from Yemen to attack Israel, and at the same time fire hundreds of missiles into Israel. They wanted a global total war, and the idea was to obliterate Israel and to exterminate the Jews. So Hamas was in a hurry, and Yahya Sinwar, the head of the Hamas by then, at least in Gaza, could not wait any longer because we were that close to making a deal with Saudi Arabia. And if Saudi Arabia was going to make peace with Israel, that was the end of the so-called Palestinian cause. I mean, the so-called Palestinian cause when they want to take over all of Israel or when they pretend to want to have a state living in peace beside Israel. This is, sorry to say, total BS. They never wanted a state. They didn't want a state in 1947, in 1967, in 2000, in 2006, in 2008, in 2014. Each time they had the opportunity, and Israel was giving the opportunity to the Palestinian Authority or other Palestinian responsible people to have a state living in peace beside Israel. They rejected the offer. And those offers were very generous. They never wanted a state because having a state would mean for them the end of a struggle against Israel. What is left for them? They don't have an economy. They don't have a social system. They don't have a real army. They don't have the money. They don't have a real government. It's just a bunch of people wandering in a place where used to be owned by the Jews thousands of years ago, and they come from different places from the world, from Egypt, from Turkey, from Jordan, from wherever you name it, even from Algeria and Tunisia, and they're all gathered in this place because it was a desert. But when the Zionist movement started, they rehabilitated this desert. They made it into something which is now a world power, and we cannot take it.
Well,
It's not.
there's something, Pierre, that you have in the documentary, and everybody as and I understand why you have a warning before this documentary starts, but there is so much incredible information in this film. One of the shocking things to me, besides all of the photos and the videos, is the information. Hamas, they want, and like you said, they don't want a state, they don't want land, they just want war, but they use the Palestinians and keep them as refugees because that's the only playing card they have to keep this war going. So they never want these people to be free. And like you said in the documentary, they have no idea how to even create infrastructure. All they know is how to be a thorn in the side of Israel.
Yeah, they are parasites. They are nothing but parasites. Without Israel, we would not be able to survive 1 year. I mean, I've been to all Palestinian territories. I've been to Ramallah and Jenin and Nablus, and I've been everywhere. They live in a much, 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 much better way than any Arab around the world. I mean, except for obviously from Arabs in Dubai. I mean, the new philosophy among Arab leaders, they are moving towards the right direction. The Morocco, the king of Morocco is also a great leader. I mean, there are amazing countries in the Muslim world. But if you go to the suburb of Cairo, they would dream of living in Ramallah, which is in the Palestinian territories. They would give everything they have to live over there. Why? Because a Palestinian economy is attached to Israeli economy. They suck the Israeli economy. They send people to work in Israel, in Ramallah or any place in the Palestinian territories. A salary maximum is $300 a month. The same people come into Israel and they get Israeli salaries because it's a law. Israel is democracy. You cannot exploit people. You cannot just have a slave like Qatari have a million slaves living in Qatar. They don't give them back their passports and they exploit them to the death. And nobody says anything about it. But in Israel, we used to give permits. We needed people to work in the building industry or people to workers and all that. And Palestinians were happy to do it because in Israel they would get the minimum salary that any Israeli gets, which is about $2,000, 7 times what they would get in the Palestinian Authority, under the Palestinian Authority. So we're happy to do that. Even from Gaza, when on October 7, the day before, 40,000 Palestinians from Gaza were working in the kibbutz around Gaza. What did they do? They recorded the map of the kibbutz and they gave it to Hamas, so Hamas knew exactly where to go to kill the people. Those same Palestinians who are coming in Israel to get a salary and were so nice and so sweet and we want peace and all that, as soon as they go back home, they do what they are always doing. Everything that you hear and read in the media about the Palestinians, 80% of it is totally wrong, totally fake news. There is a system which has been organized that I know very well, and I know why. I could spend hours explaining it. But the number one is that a journalist cannot work freely in the Palestinian territories anymore than he could work freely in North Korea. That's the same system. If you don't go with the official propaganda, you're dead. Me, okay. I've been able to go there because I have my ways, okay? Don't ask me how I've been doing it. I have my ways, and I think at this point I won't be able to do it anymore. because in the past I was not confidential, but my documentaries were not as well known as they are today. I was happy, if I had a few tens of thousands of people watching them, but today I have millions. So I think I don't think I'm going to go back to Ramallah for a certain time, unless I grow a beard and I put a hat and some glasses.
Well, let me ask you this. When Israel retaliated because of the October 7th massacre started by Hamas, is there any building left standing in Gaza?
A lot. 25% of Gaza is still standing. And I see images coming from Gaza of people going to the restaurant. And I mean, again, yeah, there are a lot of people who are suffering in Gaza right now. A lot, okay? Why are they suffering? Because Israel is blocking humanitarian aid? No, because all the humanitarian aid which went into Gaza was stolen by Hamas and sold on the black market. My friend Colonel Kemp was in Gaza just a few days ago, looking at what was going on with the new system of distributing help to the Palestinians. And the Palestinians were coming to him and saying, coming to this person and saying, this is free? The food is for free? Well, yeah, it's always been for free, but it's a humanitarian help. No, we always had to pay a high price, about 10 times the price for a packet of rice or pasta, 10 times the price that it is normal on any market in the world, including in Israel. This is what Hamas was doing. So as long as the humanitarian help was going inside Gaza through UN and through the original system of distribution, everything was going to Hamas. And then they would sell it, and with the money, they would rebuild their infrastructure or hire new soldiers to kill Israelis. That's why, at a certain point, Israel put an end to it. Okay? Now, American organization in combination with Israel are taking care of it. Guess what? Hamas is dying, not the Palestinians, Hamas. And now, one of the things that people don't know is that Israel has an enemy much worse than Hamas, than Hezbollah, than the Houthis, than Iran, much worse. This enemy is called the United Nations. United Nations have a plan to destroy Israel that they always had since the day people voted for the partition plan and Israel went to life. They could not believe. By giving the land to the Jews, some people in the United Nations, it was given to the Jews a long time ago, but making it official, some people inside the United Nations thought it was a good plan to finish Adolf Hitler's job, as simple as that. Because, put it this way, Nazism is what inspired the Palestinian nationalism. The first leader of the Palestinians, when Palestinians were still called Arabs and not Palestinians, they started being called Palestinians in 1964. Before that, there was no Palestinians. Oh yes, the Palestinians were Jews. All the posters and all the propaganda and all the publicity for the Zionist movement until 1948 was go to Palestine. Let's be a Palestinian. Palestinian was a Jew. Finally, Israel went to life, and the Palestinians became Israelis. And the Arabs remained Arabs until 1964, when Yasser Arafat, Nasser was the leader of Egypt, and the KGB, Soviet Union, decided to put an end to Israel through a new concept. Let's say that the people who are aggressing and who are the bad people there are not the Jews who suffered the Holocaust. But look at this. With the help of the Americans, they are the new colonizers. They colonize this place, and now they make a people, an existing people. The Palestinian people suffer. And that was the invention of the Palestinian people. And after that, obviously, Russia had enough money, and they put so much money in this propaganda of making Israel look bad around the world. And it started, among the in the universities and among the journalists. And this was, especially in Europe, communism was still a big thing after the war. They really thought USSR won the war, even though America did. But, SSR lost a lot of soldiers during World War II. So it was a kind of a hip thing to be on the side of the communists, at least in Europe. It's the 60s, the 70s. the 80s when Che Guevara was still a hero among the youngsters. All this crazy idea of revolution against capitalism. Israel, which was a socialist country with a kibbutz, inspired by the Holocaust from Russia, a really socialist country where there was distribution a real human system, not the socialism of today, but redistribution in order to make kind of everybody happy. And let's not get into that too much, but they made Israel look like the monster of the Middle East,
Well,
and
let
they
me ask you
spent
this.
billions on that for
Well,
that.
Pierre, in your film, one of the shocking things that learned, where did you get the footage of Adolf Hitler meeting with, I guess at that time, the so-called leader of Palestine? Where in the world
Yeah,
did you
I
find
mean,
that footage?
yeah. I'm going to tell you something which is you're going to not going to believe. Go on YouTube.
I don't think
It's
anybody's ever
everywhere.
seen it.
It's everywhere. Just type Haj Amin Al Husseini, which is the name of this terrible individual, and you will find him with Adolf Hitler. Pictures, and not only that, he was also visiting the concentration camps. He went to camps, and he also tried to convince Hitler. He tried to convince Hitler to exterminate the Jews of the Middle East as well. And Hitler gave him a house in Berlin. Hitler gave him the money to spread propaganda. He gave him a radio talk show to talk to the Arabs all around the Middle East. And the ultimate goal of Haj Amin al Husseini, who was the first Palestinian leader once more, was to build a concentration camp beside Haifa and to exterminate the Jews of Israel the same way they were exterminated in Auschwitz. And there's one historical anecdote about it, which is at a certain point, I think in 1943, the Nazis were ready to free 4,000 Jewish children and send them to Palestine in return for 4,000 war prisoners kept by the British. There was a deal going on. Give us 4,000 children, we give you 4,000 prisoners. Haj Amin al Husseini heard about it. He called Adolf Hitler, he called Himmler, and he said, "No way! Those kids must never go to Palestine. Take care of them by any means." And the kids were sent to Auschwitz and died, thanks to him. So when Benjamin Netanyahu a few years ago said that Haj Amin al Husseini, among other Palestinians, was also responsible for the Holocaust, everybody jumped on him and said, "What are you talking about? No, it was true. It's a fact. You look into it's easy. If you know what you're looking for, you're going to find it. And you just double check it and triple check it, and which is what I do all the time. Sometimes, there are some propaganda from even our side, and I make sure that I don't fall into our own propaganda. I want facts, only facts and numbers.
It must be very difficult on your end because you have to find what the truth is versus what's been manufactured by the media. In the film, where did you get the body cam footage that shows the aftermath of October 7th?
Well, some of it was given to me by people within some Israeli organizations, if you know what I mean. And some other footage was simply available on Telegram. Because what they did, the Palestinians, when they invaded Israel and committed this massacre, was to film themselves with body cams and cell phones, and they were so proud. They even filmed themselves killing people and torturing people, and they just uploaded that on Telegram. Israel was one of the first things Israel did was to send a whole team to take down all of those footage for one reason. In Israel, we value life and we respect the dead, whether they are on our side or on the other side. A dead person needs and deserves some sanctity, some holiness. So we don't want the images of our own people being killed or tortured, and we don't want to use that as propaganda. On the other hand, as you know, Palestinians are capable of killing their own children for propaganda, and I know that as a fact. Oh yeah, You go to some
Really?
families, yeah, in the
They
Palestinian
kill their
territories.
own for
Oh yeah,
propaganda
yeah.
purposes.
Listen, what they do is in when a family is connected to Hamas, there is always one child who is going to be the sacrificed child. This one is going to become a suicide bomber or something, or a human shield or something like that. And when he dies, not only is going to go to heaven and have his 72 virgin if he's a male, and if it's a female, it's something a little bit different, obviously. But on the top of that, he's going to take 70 members of his family with him to heaven. So we have all this mythology, all these numbers, and so there is a special ritual. Normally, it's a seventh child of a Palestinian family, child number seven. This one is the one who is going to save the family from hell, and who is going to take the whole family to heaven by being sacrificed. It's human sacrifice. Palestinians commit human sacrifice on a daily basis. All the numbers you see, most of the numbers you see of Palestinian children and women who are killed, they are killed because they are used as human shields by the Palestinians. First of all, that's a fact. And the other thing is that the numbers that the Hamas is giving don't include everybody. You die in a car accident, you've been killed by Israel. You have a heart attack, you've been killed by Israel. You receive a Hamas rocket, which didn't work and didn't go into Israel, but exploded in Gaza instead, you are killed by Israel. There's two gangs fighting each other, and members of the gangs are being killed. They have been killed by Israel. If you look at the numbers, there was not one dead for 18 months in Gaza, except for those killed by Israel. So
You
if
have
you take down,
completely you have completely blown apart the global media's narrative
yeah,
on this, not only on October 7th, but everything that happened before October 7th and everything that has happened after October 7th. Now, there's an area of this film that everybody needs to watch because it is a very important history lesson. But it's also a little bit confusing because what makes this confusing to the rest of the world is the different groups. You have Muslim Brotherhood, you have Fatah, you have Hamas, which is Sunnite, you have Iran, which is Shiite. And if Qatar is the major funder of terrorism, why hasn't anyone attacked Qatar?
simple. Qatar has been corrupted the entire planet. They spend billions of dollars in American universities. They certainly spend billions of dollars secretly to buy some American members of the Congress. They buy European politicians. They spend I think 1,000 billion of dollars just on soft power, and they are, the head kind of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they are also the ones who have been always supporting Hamas. But they are untouchable because it's a very small country with a lot of oil. 300,000 are real Qatari. Everybody else in Qatar is a slave imported from other countries, mostly from Asian countries. And they just do whatever they want because they bought almost everybody, and they bought certainly the French government.
But
The way,
they're also one of the largest financial centers in the
yes,
world, outside
yeah.
of New York, outside of London. And just about
Uh,
every corporation has an office in Qatar, correct?
well, definitely, you're absolutely right about that, and that's the main problem. I mean, this has been a plan for decades and decades of how to infiltrate the whole of the West, and this is a colonization of the West by Islam. Believe it or not, this is what it is, nothing else. When I don't know what happened in the elections in New York yesterday. I don't know if finally Zoran was elected or not. I hope he was not, but if he was, it's part of the plan. Take off the cities, take off the universities, and convert everybody to Islam and change democracy into Sharia law. That's the plan. It's a 100 years plan. They have all the patience they need because they believe life is better in the afterlife. They don't believe in happiness in this on this planet, and for that they need to do some things which are written in the Quran. Number one, convert all of the kuffar, and they believe in it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, after watching your film, Are all the Palestinian children brainwashed to hate
Yeah.
Israel no matter what?
They are brainwashed mainly by United Nations, believe it or not, because there's this organization called UNRWA, which means United Nations Work and Relief for Palestinian Refugees. And this organization has been in charge of the Palestinian so-called refugees since 1949 with a one-year mandate, but they are receiving 1.5 billion dollars a year from all nations of the world. They have something like 100,000 employees. I don't remember the exact number, but it's a big number. Maybe I exaggerate a little. Maybe it's more in the like 50, 60,000. And they run most of the schools in Palestinian territories. And each time you look at the books for children, school books for children in the Palestinian territories, which are printed and distributed by UNRWA, by United Nations, then Israel doesn't exist. Jews are monsters. Israel, there is nothing but Israeli soldiers. Palestine was stolen by the Jews, etc., etc. You want to go to heaven, you have to become a martyr. The heroes are martyrs. This is in the Palestinian books, and this is United Nations. You know
Well,
that Guterres, it took 3 weeks for Guterres to say something about October 7th. It took him 1 hour to say something about Qatar receiving missiles from Iran when Iran wanted to retaliate against the American army. Guterres was there right away.
okay, so when Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, and I want to back up a bit here, they were in fear that Israel and Saudi Arabia were basically going to make a peace pact. And it tells me overall, because Saudi Arabia is a little bit, it's more of a democratic, it's a more of a democracy of all of the other Arab countries. Do they truly want peace with Israel and really kind of end overall war in the region?
Well, Saudi Arabia is not a democracy. It's a kingdom. And the chance that we have in Saudi Arabia is that the new leader, the prince, Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, was raised in the Western countries. He was educated partially in America. He has a vision for his country which has nothing to do with going back to the 7th centuries and marrying your goat and drinking a camel urine to cure all your disease, which is what a lot of people believe in this world. And he's slowly and surely opening Saudi Arabia to a much more modern approach of the world, and this is a good thing. And Saudi Arabia is a very powerful country. People are very nice over there. It's a very sweet culture. When you look deep inside, it's not when you're not dealing with Islamists, but with only the people of the street. So he knows what he's doing. It's a slow process because for years there's been so much propaganda against Israel. So he has to reverse. And also, you have to understand something. The problem between between Arabs and Iran and Israel is a religious problem, nothing else. In Islam, it wouldn't be tolerated, but Jews would have a country. It's written in the Quran. They have been cursed. Jews have been cursed because they killed some prophets, and Allah, their God, will never allow the Jews to have a country, especially in the Middle East, especially back to where they are from. And on the top of that, they believe also in the Mashiach, in and Christians believe in Jesus. Jews believe that the Mashiach will come one day, and the Muslims they have the Mahdi, and the Mahdi is their Mashiach. But the Mahdi will not arrive on earth before all the Jews are killed by the Muslims. The Muslims have to exterminate the Jews before the arrival of the Mahdi. And there's even a sentence which says, and the tree and the stone will call the Muslim and will say, "Oh, Muslim, there is a Jew behind me. Come and slaughter him." That's what they believe in. So
Okay.
this is the problem.
All right. Well, let me ask you this, because you allude to a an element in this film with Hanya Hassan Senwar is considered mentally unstable, or is he just diabolical, or is he both?
Well, if you remember the film, I was looking many years ago. I went to interview a lot of terrorists in Israeli jails and also in Gaza and other places, but mainly in Israeli jails. And by then there was a doctor, Dr. Biton, who was at the same time the dentist of one of the prisons, and later on he became the chief of the intelligence within Israeli prisons, because he had a very good connection with all of the prisoners, and he's the one who uh, we discovered that Yahya Sinwar had a problem. He was losing his balance and all that. So he sent Yahya Sinwar to be tested in an Israeli hospital. Yahya Sinwar was in jail for having killed two Palestinians, not Jews, Palestinians, whom he thought they were collaborators to Israel. So he was in jail in Israel for that. And he spent all of his time learning Jewish history, learning Hebrew, and he wanted to know exactly how to make the Jews suffer as much as possible. So he tried to understand the Jewish mentality, and that's how he developed the concept of October 7 to inflict the maximum pain to the Jews by reminding them of their history in the ghettos, in the Holocaust, in the pogroms of Russia and Poland, etc. He wanted to reproduce all that at once, done by the hands of his own people. And Dr. Biton saved his life by sending him for his exam. But later on October 7th, his own nephew was killed by Hamas. And I
Was
still had
Sinwar's nephew or the doctor's
no,
nephew?
no, Dr. Biton's nephew, the guy who saved Sinwar's life. The doctor was in charge of the prisons and saved Yahya Sinwar's life by sending him to the hospital. And they discovered that he had a tumor in the brain, and they saved his life by doing surgery. So he's responsible in a way for saving the life of Yahya Sinwar. But this is Israel. We respect life, and we even save the terrorists. Doctors are doctors. There's for a doctor, every life is the same. Every life is important, and Israeli doctors are like this. So anyhow, so he lost his nephew, Dr. Biton, on October 7, and I still had his phone number. And I gave him a call to say, I'm sorry for what happened to you. And I didn't talk to him in like 10, 12 years. So we started talking on the phone. And then I realized he would be a good person to have in my film. So I asked him if he would like to be interviewed. He said, okay. So now he's in my film. And I was capable of asking him a lot of questions about Yahya Sinwar. And he told me, no, Yahya Sinwar is not a psychopath. He's just a Muslim. He knew very well what he was doing. He was doing that as an Islamist who knew very well how to make the Jews suffer. He was very rational. His approach was the same approach as Himmler or Goebbels or all those Nazis who are not psychopaths. They had a plan. The plan was to exterminate the Jews, and in the evening they would go home and have dinner with a wife and children. And Yahya Sinwar was exactly like that.
Well, then you also showed something in this film that Sinwar wore green, but he didn't wear the colors of Palestine. Why?
Well, Sinwar was an Islamist. He was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. He didn't care at all for Palestine. He didn't care at all for his Palestinian people. He's been using them. He said to Dr. Biton, he said, if I have to kill 100,000 Palestinians to free one member of the Hamas from Israeli jail, I will do it. For him, the cause, the Hamas, was more important than anything, than his own life, than his family. He was not brainwashed, he was a fanatic. You can be a fanatic without being a psychopath, especially in a Muslim culture.
Well, with all of the anti-Israel protests and people, not just in America, but in other places of the world, they're all waving the Palestinian flag, but in reality, aren't they supporting Fatah or the Muslim Brotherhood? And if they're going to protest and do it right, shouldn't they be waving the green flag and not the Palestinian one?
Well, that's a good question. Let me tell you something. Those people who are parading in the streets of Los Angeles and Paris just don't know what they are doing. They are protesting capitalism, they are protesting America, they are protesting Great Britain, they are protesting the French government. They don't even know how to point Gaza or Israel on the map. And if you start talking to them and ask them about the history of the region, they know zip. It's just, like in the past, Guevara. No, it's from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. It's a TikTok thing, it's a simple marketing. And Palestinians are very good at simple marketing. They have been using plastic dolls covered with blood to pretend that they were killed by Israel. And they have a whole system called Pallywood, Palestinian Hollywood. Pallywood is all the actors. You can see the same guy who one day is a doctor covered with blood, the next day is a journalist dying, the next day is alive again, and now he's a nurse in the hospital. It's crazy. It's a whole system of propaganda, and the journalists, especially the BBC and CNN, fall for that happily, as long as they can bash the Jews.
All right. Now, a few days ago, Putin said that 2 million Russians live in Israel.
Yeah.
So is Russia wanting to break down Israel from the inside out?
No, absolutely not. No, no. What happened is this: after the end of the Cold War, the Jews were really poorly treated in Russia, and they couldn't go out of Russia, and a lot of them wanted to go to the Western world. So there was this possibility, if you were a Jew, to automatically become an Israeli. It's called the law of return. If the law of return in Israel is a copycat of the Nuremberg law. If during the war you could be sent to Auschwitz because your grandfather was a Jew, you can become an Israeli if your grandfather was a Jew. It's the reverse,
So
law.
a lot of those Russians living in Israel, they're Russian Jews?
Oh, absolutely, 90% of them.
Well,
they just escaped.
They didn't clarify that fact in the media, so that answers a lot of questions right there. So
Well,
that makes complete sense.
yeah.
Now, you made a mention in this film, and I'm kind of wondering what kind of response you've had to this fact. You mentioned the Red Cross. Why did you mention the Red Cross? Because in the film, it says they denied that the atrocities of the Holocaust act even happened.
They did.
Look,
They did. They did. They sent people to visit Auschwitz, and the people visiting Auschwitz came back from Auschwitz saying nothing happens. Everything is fine. It's a Club Med. It's a 5-star hotel. They live beautifully. No, they didn't go to that extent, but they said they didn't see one side of extermination and one side of poor treatment of the Jews. End of the story. The letter is in the film. You can see it. And on the top of that, during after October 7, the Red Cross didn't make any single effort to try to visit the hostages. They had leverage. They could have said to Hamas and to the Palestinians, we don't work with you anymore. We don't help you anymore. We just need to see the hostages and make sure that they're okay. They didn't do anything. At the same time, they were coming into Israel to demand to visit the Palestinian prisoners, the murderers, the criminals of October 7 were put in jail. They wanted to make sure that those guys were well treated in Israel. Not the hostages living in the tunnels, but the terrorists who are very well treated, I can tell you, because I spent a lot of time in Israeli jails. It's a jail where you have no problem going. I think I would rather be a Palestinian terrorist sent into an Israeli jail, but any American gangsters sent into an American jail. Those jails are very comfortable. I could send you pictures of me in those jails having a barbecue with terrorists in one of their jail or one of their cells, and everybody laughing. I can send you a video that I got there. Actually, I put it in the film from within the jail, the imam calling for the prayers, and everybody doing their, Allah Akbar thing. So Israeli jails are very comfortable, and that's humanity of the Jews. What can I say?
So the Red Cross, and I assume the UN, never went in to check on the hostages' health, did they?
Never. Nobody. It's too beautiful. I mean, can you imagine the joy of anti-Semites to imagine that Jews are living in the tunnels and suffering under Hamas, torturing them and that? because this is what we're dealing with in some places of the world. Today, people who are going down the streets of Los Angeles with a Palestinian flag, 80% of them are just pure anti-Semites. They don't want anything else. They don't care about the Palestinians. They don't care about the Palestinians in Yarmouk who were slaughtered by the Syrian regime, 20,000 of them. They didn't care about the Palestinians who were killed by Jordan, by the Jordan king in 1973, 30,000 of them. They don't care, obviously, about the Sudanese who are slaughtered by the regime of Sudan every day. And I'm in connection with them, and I talk to them every day because there's a wonderful personality over there. His name is Mohammed. I won't say his name because it's delicate. But anyhow, he's there and is kind of a local leader trying to protect this population. He's sending me pictures of what is happening in southern Sudan. You don't see that in the news. It's a daily massacre. You know what they do? They go to Christian villages or villages of people who are not extremists, and they take them in the desert without water. They make them walk for 2 or 3 days until they die. That's what
Yeah,
they do.
the death march.
The death march. They
Well,
organize
let
death
me
march.
ask you this: do you think that there's going to be a regime change in Iran, and maybe with the hopes? Because I've talked to Iranian filmmakers. They all dream of the day to go back to what it was before 1979. That is their
Oh,
hope. Do you think that
oh
will
yeah.
ever happen?
It's a complicated situation in Iran. Um, Persians, Iranians, Persians are very patriot and very proud people. It would have, for other people, it could have been a great opportunity while Israel was attacking to use the weakness of the regime at this very moment to upraise. But the reflex of the Iranian people, even though they hate the regime and they want freedom, was to back up the regime because they were attacked by a foreign country. They like Israel. They don't dislike the Jews. They have no problem. But if they are being attacked by Americans, by the Jews, by Israel, by the French, by whoever, all of a sudden there's this reflex of pushing it back. I'm a Persian. How dare you bomb me? That's one thing. The other thing is that they are not organized. And it's not for America or Israel to topple the regime and see what happens. We need a replacement. The Shah, I don't think is a replacement because he's been living in exile for 45 years, so he's not connected to the people anymore. He may have connections, he may be talking to friends or ex-members of his family, but we don't know him. He's been living in Los Angeles and in London on yachts and private jets and all that, while the people are suffering. They don't go for that. We need a leader from the people who can associate everybody and march to Tehran and topple the regime. We don't see that happen. It might happen now. It might happen now because there is a pause and because we don't know what happened to Khamenei. For 15 days, we didn't hear about Khamenei, the supreme leader, the leader of the regime in Tehran, and he completely disappeared. Today, there was only they just wrote a tweet on X from a Twitter saying a big victory for the Iranian people against the Americans and Israel. We just congratulations for my victorious Iranian people for defeating Israel. Israel is, I mean, the whole thing is laughable, but it was a written tweet. It didn't appear. You don't
Well,
see him talking. So everybody thinks he may be dead or so sick he cannot work.
yeah, I get that. Now, your film Pogroms is on Apple TV and Tubi TV. When people tune in to watch it, what do you want them to take away from it?
Everybody has a little bit knowledge of the situation and they need the other facts to put it all together. I hope they find those facts in the film to add to what they already know. So some people will know about history, some other people will know about what actually happened on October 7th, and some other people will be appealed what is happening in New York and Paris, but they would want to know why, and we try to explain it as well through the Qatari money, among other things. So just grab informations. Whatever you don't know yet, it's in the film.
It's in the film. And ladies and gentlemen, Pierre Rehov's documentary film, Pogroms, covers the atrocities of October 7th massacre in Israel with real video and photos. This film does come with a warning due to those who lost their lives unnecessarily. Now, the images are haunting. The level of inbred hate is very hard for many people to understand, and those supporting this level of hate are brainwashed and ignorant. Now, Pierre
Absolutely.
brings something we don't often see: historical facts, and destroys the false narratives that we are all seeing in today's media. Now, Pogroms is available now on Apple TV Plus and Tubi TV. And Pierre, I want to thank you so much for coming onto the program and enlightening all of us with this film documentary and some behind the scenes look. And I pray that many will see it and get educated.
Thank you very much for having me on your show. And sorry again for my accent. I hope people have been able to support it to survive it for that long.
Oh no, it was fantastic, Pierre. And again, ladies and gentlemen, check out the film documentary Pogroms. It's on Apple TV Plus and Tubi TV. It does come with a warning, so be prepared. But when it comes to factual reporting, Pierre Rehov has brought that to the world. So I highly suggest you get educated, learn some history, so when you do watch the news, you're going to understand a lot more about what smoke and mirrors really means. So get educated. That's what film is all about. And again, it is a very powerful film. And for some of you, it may be a little hard to swallow, but sometimes truth hurts. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can catch all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show and our YouTube channel, and you can listen to us on your way to work or at play on Spotify, iTunes, and Audible, and more. I want to thank you for watching.